morning. A very warm welcome, dear viewers, to another edition of the Mike from Newlands show. We've just got into the show. I'm going to announce my special guest right off because this man is very, very interesting, and I've brought back so many memories for me which now I've gone completely off script. But let me introduce him nevertheless. His name is Ganief Hendricks, and he is the leader of the Jama-ah party here in Cape Town. But obviously the party is a national party. So we were just talking, dear viewers, about District 6. I worked there when I was 14. I'm now 73. So you can imagine it was a long time ago, but I was a very young student. And it turns out Ganief probably one day was one of my customers. Am I right, Ganief?
Well, it could be because I was 13 and we had some UCT academics living at our house. And this one was Dr. Mafeji, an African icon who later on helped Thabo Mbeki establish the African Renaissance at UNISA. And he just wore impeccable suits. He was a kid from Flagstaff in the Transkei. His father was a school principal. And obviously my mom used to then give me suits to take to Combat Cleaners.
And there you go.
You worked there.
And there I worked. And in fact, viewers, it's very interesting. When I worked there, it was kind of, I think it would be in Hanover Street. And
That's
I think
correct.
it was one of the main, in fact, was, as Ganief just reminded me, there were two, but we were certainly the biggest. And very years later, David Kramer wrote a song for his show, District 6. And in that song, he writes about Comet Cleaners, because it was such a part of the community, and so many people went there. So I find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it was in Hanover Street, which is an iconic
path.
street
Yeah.
in District 6. You
Yeah.
had the famous 7 steps there.
Correct.
And the headquarters of the Globe Gang.
I remember walking up from the station every Saturday morning, because I worked there from 7 till about 1 every day.
Yes.
Every Saturday. So it was, great times, amazing. But we'll talk about that more some other time. I think, first of all, let me just set the scene, Ganief, if I may, and then we're going to get on to the reason for your being a guest here, is to discuss your manifesto. So, viewers, let me just say that, first of all, I want to just thank Ganief for another reason, is that he's got me off the hook. Because, Ganief, I'm often accused of having too many DA people on my show. And, it's quite difficult to sometimes get guests. And I have to say, their websites are not well managed. If you email them, they don't email back. And in the case of the ANC's website, there's not even phone numbers or email addresses. But I got hold of Jama-ah's website. Within minutes, I got a reply. I then got a WhatsApp from a very nice lady. I sent off the invitation, and in no time you'd responded. And I was just, I just wish other political parties could take a leaf out of your book, because it must be so frustrating for people that want to learn a little bit more. And the political party says, well, just go and look at our website. Well, if you do find the manifesto, as you do with the EFF, Ganief, it's about 240 pages.
And yeah.
I mean, the ANC one is, I'm a bit of an expert on manifesto. The ANC is about 46. The DA is also around about the 35 number. Yours is I think it's about 4 pages. It's simple, it's nicely set out, and very, very readable. So I want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you very much.
No, you deserve it, and I just hope people take the trouble to read your manifesto, because we've got to make a big decision in this year. People have got to decide where we're going to go. It's not an option not to vote. And I really do hope that this show is going to allow people to hear about the different manifestos from the different political parties, so they can make an informed decision. And the reason I say that is, I was watching a show last night, JJ Tamani.
Yes.
And in this show, it was on crime. Ganief, we have now reached a situation, I'm going a little bit off script here, but 86 people are murdered in this country every day. As the one guest mentioned, that's like 20, one person's murdered every 20 minutes. Our economy is not much better. economy in this country is in a shambles. And you mentioned in your manifesto the shockingly high unemployment rate, particularly amongst the youth. And it's an often quoted fact, Ganief, as you'll know, if you're between the ages of 17, 18, 25, 26, and black, generally, you're not going to get a job if you haven't got a job now. That's how bad things are. And yet the ANC in this country seem to understand, or do not seem to appreciate the fact that if we do not look after the investors that we've got in this country already, before we go looking for others, that we are going to put so many more jobs in jeopardy. We've got our AGOA, which is under threat, and that's simply because, for some strange reason, like the USA or not, they do give us preferential trade agreements. We do have 60,000 jobs in the Western Cape, which are pretty much dependent on that AGOA treatment, agreement. And we might lose those. We've got Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and Toyotas, dear viewers, that are in this country. And we would like to have other manufacturers here, but we've already had VW threatening to leave. And why is that? Because our transport system's collapsing, our harbors are collapsing. The administration of our various departments is just become, well, unmanageable. And then we move on to the unemployment before we get on to the ANC. What I can't work out, dear viewer, just putting it crisply, we do something like 460 billion rands worth of trade with Europe. We do about 3.5% or some 4% with the USA. Not that big, I thought it would be more. We do less than 1% with Russia. But the ANC currently was just come back from Russia, where they sat there drinking vodka with our Putin, who is nothing more than a psychopath who invaded another country. They're sitting there drinking vodka and heaven knows what else. And while they're there, the leader of the opposition party in Russia is murdered in a gulag. A young man, 47, 48 years old, he's murdered while he was there. I believe they've just released his body. And the ANC government says nothing. Now, I'm not going to remind you all of about the 67 or 68 young men that died in detention in our country. And when I was part of the Alliance for Radical Change a long time ago, it was incredible how many people were locked up and taken away, and people that died fighting apartheid. Yet here's a person, opposition member in Russia, he's killed, and the ANC does and says absolutely nothing. We seem to also just have lost our way. We have 200 black children starved to death every month. I forget the newspaper, it was in last week, just in the Eastern Cape alone. 167, I think it was, children died from starvation. Yet, we fly over all the way to Russia to spend time supporting Putin, who's invaded Russia. We pick up the phone and we phone Hamas and get involved in a fight there that I simply don't understand. It's on the other side of the world, the fighting a country smaller than the size of Kruger National Park. But our own people here are losing jobs and are dying. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm hoping that what we're going to find in these manifestos going forward is that we will look into our own backyard first. Because that's what I'm looking for when I look into a manifesto. Are we in fact looking after our own people first? It cannot be that we have our own children falling in pit toilets, that we have massive unemployment, the highest stunted growth in the world. Why is it we seem to be the worst in everything in the world in this country at the moment? And we're not getting fair deal from our government. And just in conclusion, I was really unsurprised because I sat and waited for the committee to meet yesterday in Parliament. Now, a lot of you will know SAA has blown 60 billion rand. I can't tell you how many houses, how much, what a difference that money would have made if it was invested into our country, but it wasn't. It was invested in aircraft overseas. That 50 billion is gone. It's left our country. It's never going to come back. So none of us have ever benefited from it, apart from the people that are rich enough to be able to fly. And yesterday, the ANC, through the media, out of the committee room in Parliament, where they were going to discuss this new, very suspicious deal that the ANC is trying to put together with a company whose name escapes me. I think it's Takata. But the media were not allowed to be there, which tells me quite simply that the ANC doesn't want the media there, because obviously somebody bought the cash and they're going to split it up, and they don't want anybody to see what they're doing it. There can be no other reason as to why the public are excluded from watching their own money being spent. There can be no other reason other than the fact that the ANC is splitting up our money and spending it on whatever they spend it on. So it's become clear to me as I sit here doing these shows and I read these manifestos that the ANC is no longer a political party. It's just become a crime syndicate. That's actually what we're dealing with. And now that I've got that off my chest and I understand the fact that we're dealing with a crime syndicate, I actually feel a lot better, because now everything they do makes sense to me, because nothing else at the moment that the ANC does make sense. Because at the end of the day, dear viewers, we can have democracy. We can have all these wonderful things, freedom of speech, which I thank the ANC for, that I can sit here and hold a show and bring people in like Ganief, who's going to explain his way and how his party operates. This is fantastic. It's media freedom. But quite frankly, if I'm talking to people out there that are struggling to find a way to make a living, turning to crime because there's just no other employment for them, and then on top of that, our very own government is driving employment away from our country. And it does that by having the craziest laws, expropriation without compensation. I've yet to find a company that says, yes, that's fine, they'll pull in here, they'll build here, and they don't mind the fact that their factory might be removed without compensation, or taken away without compensation. I haven't heard of that company yet, and I can tell you what, there aren't any. And also, I haven't heard of a company yet that will put up with the fact that they are told by Tulis Nesi how many black people, white people, Indian people they can employ. And Tulis Nesi was on the show with Aldrin Sampear not long ago. In this show, Aldrin Sampear, the drive time host of the show, asked Tulis Nesi, he said, look, if an Indian person applies to come and work at a company, but they've already got their quota in Indians, what must that Indian person do? Because their company wants to employ him because he's qualified for that job. He's the man they want. Tulis Nesi said, well, you can't employ him. In fact, I'll quote him, you can't employ more than what we want. So the ANC is now telling a private company how many Indians it can employ. So Sampear, to his credit, said, well, exactly. So then what happens to that Indian person? Tulis Nesi, our Minister of Unemployment, replied as follows. He said he must look for jobs in other companies. Now, when I last looked, ladies and gentlemen, coloureds, Indians, all equally suffered under apartheid. We had a situation here in the Western Cape where 11 prison officers all applied for promotion. 9 were coloured, 1 was white, 1 was black. Without doubt, the coloured officers had written all the exams, they had all the qualifications, and one of them, they were all suitably qualified for this particular promotion. And guess what? The black correctional officer got it. Now, nobody has a problem with that, certainly not me, except the fact that he was the least qualified of the lot. But he was chosen because of the colour of his skin. So this country needs to rethink the way we're going, and we are not going to grow the economy with this kind of attitude. But there is hope on the horizon, ladies and gentlemen. And that hope comes in the fact that we have got lots of new political parties that have come onto the political platform and have ideas. They've got manifestos, and they've got an idea of how they see the country can best be taken forward. Because it's clear to me we're on the wrong track right now. So once again, I want to really welcome Ganief Hendricks for taking the time out, for having such a fantastic organization that's on the ball, sharp. And if you run the country as well as you run your party and your website, I think we've got a winner right here. So thank you very much for coming along to this show. I want to touch on the first thing on your manifesto. And I'll tell you why I raised this one. It's because I didn't see it. And that's education. Now, you've got on a manifesto, and I urge everybody to go and read it. It's very interesting, and it's got some very, very good ideas. It's about 14 points, 16 points.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't touch on education that I could see. And I want to ask you, what is your view, or what is the view of your... You know what I wanted to ask you? I'm going to go off script. Jama-ah, what does that mean? My wife said to me, find out what that name means. So
Yeah.
I better do that.
Jama-ah is a Swahili word.
Oh, I didn't know.
Swahili is the first language of Africa. All other languages are based on Swahili. So in Swahili, it means Ubuntu. It means community coming together to serve good causes. It's also an Arabic word, Jama-ah. And because our first constituency was largely Muslims, we now have a diverse constituency. We wanted to attract their votes and chose the name Jama-ah because it will resonate with them. We knew that later on we need African votes. So that same name will also appeal to them if they understand where their languages come from and they understand a bit of Swahili. So Jama-ah is like you will see on our logo, a platform for all communities. So we're very focused on community sentiment, Ubuntu, community sentiment, your child is my child, and it is centered around African values, African justice, and Africa, about 60% are also Muslims, and they speak Swahili as well. So we don't see ourselves as a South African political party, but as an African political party. Africa should be one country. And we've had Uhuru in over 50 African countries, but they're all weak. Just imagine if we just have one country called Africa, like the European Union, we can flex our muscles. Nigeria can't flex its muscles. South Africa can't flex its muscles. In fact, there's a regime change happening as we speak. The Minister of Intelligence confided in us that America wants to create a regime change, starting with the Western Cape. We feel that the Western Cape is part of South Africa and should always remain part of South Africa. However, they want to start bringing about I won't say a white state, because there are many other population groups in the Western Cape. But the whole idea is to share power without losing control. So the whites will largely control the Western Cape, with settlers and immigrants from all over the world bringing their capital, bringing their money, supported by America. Just like America put Israel in the Middle East, it now wants to do the same in South Africa, so it has a beachhead for the rest of Africa.
And that's certainly a very interesting bit of news. I had absolutely no idea that was happening. I assume you're probably referring to the Cape exit and that kind of thing, or are you suggesting that the DA, because the DA has introduced this new bill which will allow more powers to the Western Cape to run the Western Cape, because their argument is the policing, the trains, just generally every government service that we rely on is of a very poor standard. So they are looking to run the trains. And is that what you're referring to?
No,
or is there some sort of a government? In other words, has the President of the United States said, look, we're going to infiltrate Africa through from, as you say, making a beachhead in Cape Town? Is that?
Look, I can only say what the Minister of Intelligence in the presidency has put on in the public record,
Okay.
and also confided with political party leaders. And she's made it clear that there is what they call a soft coup d'etat happening
Okay.
through the ballot box. Normally a coup d'etat is military, but this time they're reimagining politics. It's through the ballot box. So America is funding many political parties so that they can control them when they get seats in the Western Cape.
Do you know who the parties are, Ganief?
Yes, we all know the parties. It's ACDP right at the top,
Yeah.
and obviously the DA as well.
Yeah.
So it's not only the DA.
Yeah.
It's a lot of other parties.
Ah.
It is Inkatha Freedom Party,
Yeah.
and it is obviously the Freedom Front Plus, and there are other parties as well.
And does the
smaller
ANC,
parties.
does the Minister of Security have proof of this?
Yes, I mean
Wow.
she wouldn't tell take political party
But
leaders.
is she going to
into
go
the
public
conference.
with this?
She has
I'm
gone
not aware of
public.
it, and I've never heard
She
of it.
has gone public.
Oh, okay.
You just Google regime change.
I will
and
do
then
that.
You'll find out
Okay.
the speeches and so on.
I don't want to dwell too much on this.
So
Sorry,
there are
Ganief.
extra
Yeah.
intelligence operatives that have formed a unit to prevent regime change.
Okay. Okay. I want to just move on to something else just very quickly. African languages. Now, the one thing we were talking about District 6, I was born into apartheid. And one of the things I struggled with when 1994 came, and the one thing I hoped would happen, is that the ANC government would say, right, we are now going to have an African language as a compulsory language in our schools. Because if you remember, under apartheid, Afrikaans was a compulsory
Yes,
language.
that's correct. Yeah.
And but the ANC never did that. Now so look, for me it was too late, and it's been a curse for me. I'm frustrated by the fact that I can't converse with my black colleagues in their own language. It annoys me that they can only speak to me in English and I can't speak back in whatever, whether it's isiZulu or wherever they come from. It's a very frustrating thing, and it's not just for me, it's for my colleagues as well when I was working.
Of course.
And now, of course, my grandchildren are at school, and they're still not learning an African language. And I put this question to everybody that I can, do you have a reason, or do you think there's a reason for that? And if so, as your party, Jama-ah, would you enforce it?
Look, as you know, that very soon grade R will be compulsory for all South Africans. And I feel that, in their curriculum from grade R, there needs to be the dominant African languages in that particular area or province. They call it districts nowadays.
Okay.
The dominant African communities that are and the languages they speak should be compulsory from grade R, and then you move progressively right up to grade 12. So that is the way to start. If you're going to
Is
start,
this going to be the case? Is this going to be?
no, what is going to be the case is that grade R is compulsory.
Sure.
The Bella Bill is adopted, and that's what I like about the Bella Bill, that grade R is compulsory, so it is a constitutional right of kids at that age to get a decent education. So that is the start. Now it is up to Jama-ah, when it gets to Parliament and serve on the Portfolio Committee for Basic Education, to push the viewpoint that I expressed earlier on. At the moment, there are no plans in that direction, but I think that we need to very quickly insist that happens.
I'm really pleased to hear that.
So at least, my grandkids will be able to speak, with other kids from other areas in their language. Now, the public schools are far behind, but every private school that I know has, even in the pre-grade R classes, and obviously after grade R, grade 1, 2, 3, there's an African language.
Correct.
My grandchildren, they are at private schools, and they are speaking African language, but in the public schools, like my brother's kids are in public schools. They don't have a clue about African language.
I mean, this is, so I agree with you, and I really do hope that your party will enforce this. I personally, my theory is, and when I say the ANC is a gangster party, I mean it, and I think one of their ideas is not to have African languages taught. I don't think it suits them. I think they'd rather keep a nice distance between blacks and whites. It suits them for all sorts of ideological reasons. So it's amazing that they've never encouraged it from day one. I would have thought they would have said, right, whether you like it or not. But I'm already now into my second grandson. He's in grade 4.
Yes.
He's at a government school, and I'm paying, well, I'm not, but his parents are now paying extra lessons to have him learn an African language. But my other grandson, who's now in grade R, there's no sign of him either going to be learning unless we pay extra money. It just, as I say, anyway, I want to not dwell on it too much. I accept what you're saying. It makes absolute sense. And I do hope that Jama-ah will fight this one, because I hope you agree. We need to be all speak the same language.
That's correct.
And it's frankly insulting to other people that I can't converse with them in their language. I want to just go on to the creating jobs. I'm up against the clock, and I realize that your time is important, and I don't want to waste it. You mentioned creating jobs. The one this I find, looking at most of the manifestos, I've become a bit of a manifesto expert there, Ganief. But I can't, the common denominator amongst all of them, except I have to say the DA, is that nobody talks about foreign investment. They're all talking about creating jobs within our country. And you talk about the idea of business incubators open up employment opportunities. But I would put it to you, Ganief, that with an economy growing less than 1%, in other words, going backwards, we're chasing old money. I could open up a business tomorrow, but nobody's got any money. There's no spare cash. It's being soaked up in taxes, high cost of living, food, all those things I don't have to tell you about. So I would ask you, should we not be looking outside the country and asking overseas investors to come in and getting in people that will take our products or rather, let's say, take our minerals and beneficiate those minerals in our country? We need to have overseas investments. I'll give you a classic example just quickly. I tried to sell a piece of land which is subsequently sold. The price of the land was just over 200 million. The person who wanted to buy it was a black gentleman, lived in Switzerland, but an American from Texas. He wanted to buy it. He came out to South Africa with his wife. He went to Natal. He absolutely got the fright of his life with the lawlessness and the building and stuff. He went to Joburg. He called it the Wild West. And then he came to Cape Town. All the time I'm asking him, why did you want to invest here? I said, because what I've seen, I'm scared to death as well, and I live here. He said, no, but it's part of my roots, so I want to be here. So I found a piece of land for him to buy and develop. It's the one which is the old airport that is now being redeveloped by Rob Hersoff. He wanted to buy that. So he said, look, Mike, I've got a problem here. And he produced the expropriation without compensation bill. And he said, how am I going to get this past my investors? Because they're not going to invest here if they're going to possibly lose their building and the land. So I approached the late Jackson Ntembu. I said, listen, Jackson, I'm about to make like 120 Rand, was it 10.5 million Rand commission on this sale. I said, this will be the sale of my lifetime. And I've had meetings in Germany and Hamburg and Frankfurt and heaven knows what. I went to see the buildings in East Berlin where they fixed them up from the old Russian order. And the whole thing fell through because expropriation without compensation. The minister in the presidency, Jackson Ntembu, did not even really have the courtesy to come back and tell me, listen, take your business, we're not interested. I actually spoke to him on the radio. I can't remember the presenter, but he was on the radio. I phoned in and spoke to him, and he said, yes, okay, we'll deal with it. Nothing happened. So what I'm saying is that we are doing whatever we can not to bring business into this country. But your ideas here are great, but they're based on no growth. And I don't see how, when you say youth accounts for 60% of South Africa's unemployment. You've got the LED must absorb youth and the scarce skills into jobs with the support of the national government. But the national government hasn't got any money because they're also broke. We're paying a debt of R1 billion a day. We daren't borrow another dollar because we're going to be in serious trouble. So how does Jama-ah see us overcoming that? Or would you go with the idea, do you agree that we need to bring in, and by the way, I don't care where it comes from, China, I don't care where it comes from, Russia, we just need employment. I want to see people in South Africa at work. So what's your take on that?
Let me give you a quick answer and then and then another answer, if you give me the time.
Sure.
The quick answer is, as we speak, we are bringing an investor into South Africa to manufacture EV, which is electrical vehicles. So they will set up a manufacturing plant, I hope it's in Cape Town, and they will produce electric cars, and all over they will start putting charging stations that is powered by windmills and powered by water and also by the sun, of course. So that is the way Jama-ah is going. So the investor contacted Jama-ah. I then met with the Minister of Trade and Industries in Parliament, sat him down. He was very helpful. The same evening, his Deputy Director General of Investments phoned me. We yesterday had a Zoom meeting with the CEO of this company, and the Deputy Director of Investments explained that they welcome, because the Minister just announced a day or two before that there will be a 150% tax incentive when you introduce electrical vehicles into the country. They, for example, told him, don't worry about buses. Worry about passenger cars. That's where the market is. And so there is a young African group, youngsters at university, who does some consulting work for this investor. And so I've told him, I'll assist as a party, which I did. And I mean, within a day or two, we found that the Department of Trade and Industry is now providing them with sufficient information for their feasibility study. And they have just sold about 50,000 electrical vehicles to different countries. They make the vehicles in Kazakhstan and in China. But I told them, look, I will cooperate with you, and no memorandum of agreements to get clipping fees, and no, what's there for me. Straightforward. I want to create jobs, next generation jobs. Let me talk about next generation jobs. So parties like the DA promises 2 million jobs. The governing party, they went one step further and said 2.5 million jobs.
Well, I think they call them not jobs, they call them work opportunities.
Right, jobs.
Whatever that is, yeah.
So I've got experience in creating jobs. In 2002, I got an award as a pioneer of the internet. That time it was MWeb, controlled by Naspers. And I got the award from Koos Becker and, Antoine Roux.
Interesting.
And, together with 5 of others that worked for MWeb, for creating next generation jobs and new revenue streams. So if it wasn't because of my involvement I mean, you don't just get an award, a nice wooden award, which I still have. We've created millions and millions of jobs as a result of the internet. If it wasn't because of me and others, you wouldn't have had Facebook. You wouldn't have been able to broadcast. You wouldn't have had WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram. I recruited and trained the staff for online shopping. The first customer was Pick n Pay. Online banking. Nedbank gave us a subsidiary of theirs that we could use for sales via the internet. We did online media. Media 24, I appointed the first 30 people of Media 24.
Ganief, I understand what you're saying.
So now what
Yes.
I'm saying is, so when I say that as far as Al Jama-ah's position is on jobs, when we get to Parliament, we are going to push for full employment.
But how are you going to do that?
Yes,
with no
I'll
money?
tell you how we're going to do it with full employment. Gaddafi did it in Libya when he took over from the Italians, I think. Right, full employment. Everyone had a job. There are some Scandinavian companies which have full employment. So we will look at their models. How did they create full employment? And I've already done a bit of research. Companies will be forced to take charge of full employment, and if not, they must disinvest and go to other countries. We don't need them, which happened in Libya, and some countries did leave. But the country became very prosperous and everyone was employed. So we need to be very bold. Now, Al Jama-ah reimagines politics. For example, we're running the city of Joburg. We just got an unqualified audit, a clean audit, with no findings in the market, in the theatre. An audit better than the city of Cape Town, which the DA got. And we're just running the city of Joburg for 1 year. So Chief Justice Mugang, he was examining, this whole situation of Al Jama-ah with 1% of the vote, running the largest metro in Africa, the richest metro in Africa. It was rich in the good old days. Like you also speak about the good old days in District 6. And he wanted to know, now, is this coincidental? And he said, no. Al Jama-ah has planned this. They've reimagined politics, and he called it the Al Jama-ah effect. So the Al Jama-ah effect is the core of our manifesto promises to the country.
I need to understand this though, because we also must move on. There's other things, but just so simply put, you suggesting that that companies that don't want to operate with government supervision, I suppose.
No government supervision. They will. You see, government shouldn't create a single job. The private sector must create all jobs.
Exactly.
So if the private sector doesn't create jobs, that is their mandate, then we don't want them in this economy.
You're saying that if a company does not create jobs, then they must leave.
You see, every company that you referred to earlier on has got so much cash that they're holding back to make South Africa ungovernable. They've got enough cash to invest. We don't need a cent from overseas.
Let me put that to you.
Right?
I don't believe for a second that a company, let's take Toyota, but it could be any company, is sitting with a lot of cash.
In South Africa,
and they don't want to invest because they've got some nefarious reason for it. I just simply think that they look at the fact we've got a police force that's completely and utterly corrupt. We have a president that hides money in his sofa. We've got rail networks that don't work. We've got Eskom
if they're not happy with all of that, they must leave the country, because if they created jobs, you wouldn't have had these problems.
But my point is, Ganief, how are they going to create the jobs if they don't have electricity? So they've got the money, the people are standing outside the gates of the factory, and they say, hey, I want to work, but they can't say, look, guys,
the reason we don't
factory.
have electricity because of the apartheid you referred to. And you can't expect the ANC, as incompetent as they are, to make sure that we have a stable grid. That grid was deliberately built to create problems. And I don't want to go into Eskom and the boilers and how the engineers there manipulate it. And so what I'm saying is that many companies realized that the ANC can never fix the electricity. They were good days. So they are self-sufficient. They're off-grid. So companies that are not off-grid are not modern companies. They're not moving with the times. So the companies are to blame for not being off-grid and having their own little, let's call it mini-grids. I've convinced the Minister of Electricity that we should have mini-grids provincially, in districts. We already have 100 mini-grids for 100 villages. That they've offered me one of those grids in whatever village Jama-ah has a constituency. I'm still taking up that offer. So what I'm saying, full employment in South Africa is not a pipe dream. The private sector, there's illicit financial, besides the cash that they're holding, which is 10 times our GDP. Besides that,
Yes.
which they're holding,
Yes.
generational wealth which they're creating when they have a return to apartheid and white rule in South Africa. Besides that, I serve on a group of 40 African countries. Through Oxfam, we did a 6-year research, and we found that every African country, and South Africa is the best of the lot, 50% of South Africa's GDP is lost through illicit financial flows. So that means money leaving the country without being taxed.
Correct.
Let's call it in
Correct.
brackets legally.
Correct.
We have published a book with the names of all the companies, and Lonman is one of them where Ramaphosa was a chairman.
But
Right?
may I just touch on that one? I agree with you. We are losing a huge amount of money. And you can mention Longman, and they must be dealt with. But we also know that the Guptas went out here with hundreds of billions. We also know that we're on the grey list, simply because, referring back to our president, he inexplicably hides dollars in his couch. We have become known as the go-to country to move funds through for drugs, heroin, children trafficking, because our systems here are so lax.
And the whites are in the forefront of it. So that is the problem, you see.
But now you say the whites...
As soon as these white investors are not necessarily South Africans, they are born in other countries. And, they want to make the country ungovernable.
But why is why is our government, are they incompetent? Is that what you're saying, that they cannot stop this? Because you know it's happening. You're telling me right now it's happening. And I'm not arguing with you at all. But what I am arguing is, why don't we fix it?
Let me tell you why. Right? The SIU is the prime authority to do that.
Yeah.
So when there are corruption in government departments and the president approves a SIU investigation, and some of them have been very successful, they've had a lot of successes. The problem is that they have to bill the government department for their expenses, and they are short of 2 billion rand in their red at the moment. So they don't have cash. So you as a government department want an investigation and these white companies to be dealt with severely. And, there's a lot of examples.
Well, we have this case with Sasford.
Yes.
It's just...
So there are many more. The problem is that department doesn't give them, the SIU, their money up front. So they are low on the list. Departments that give money up front, their cases are dealt with. So what happens once a case has been completed and it's in the courts, then they bill the government department, and then there's 30 days before they are paid. You can't operate like that. No. And I've raised this in Parliament.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is a systemic problem. Yeah. And then, of course, you must remember that as a result of CODESA, jobs were guaranteed. Half of our security forces were previously the operatives of white apartheid. They're still in employment. They're dying off, but they're taking too long to die off. So the problem is that the intelligence forces in South Africa are still controlled largely operationally. Maybe not when you see the black faces, but operationally on the ground and in the admin structures and the operational structures are apartheid operatives.
What would you say to the fact that if you look at the SIU and you look at the Hawks, you look at SAPS and you look at the NPA, that they all ultimately answer to our president? Our president has already said, well, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, he's guilty of money laundering, but that's not been proven. But he certainly does very strange things. He has said...
The problem is the whites put him there. Why did they enforce such a president on the country?
I'm not arguing
the
about...
Oppenheimers, the Ruperts, all of them who initially gave Mandela helicopters and traveling.
But that's not what he says.
They put him there now.
That's not what he says. He says he will rather be a weak president than split the ANC. And he stood by what he said. The ANC is still hanging together, only just. I mean, he's actually messed that up because Zuma has now left the party. And if we look at Zuma said in Parliament, the ANC comes first and the country comes second. So what I'm simply saying is, and that is why the Scorpions were disbanded so quickly by Zuma, because they were an independent policing body. So I'm just saying to you, Ganief, would you not agree that with you've got all the investigative agencies reporting for whatever reason to one man who will then manipulate the outcome of those cases, that we are not going to see any justice at all, which is why nobody...
You see, you've got it wrong there. Ramaphosa is controlled by super cadres who comes from 5 different factions in the ANC. So it's not one man. You're completely wrong.
No, this is why you're here, Ganief. I'm here to learn.
So you're completely wrong.
I am just a citizen.
So you must, 5 years in Parliament, and we have working relationships with most parties. That's why we run the city of Joburg very successfully, although the media is paid to come up with dirt all the time and to undermine the party and and our mayoral parlour. Just imagine, Jama-ah is there just for 1 year. 3 other governments messed up, the DA, Action SA and the ANC. They brought the Joburg to its knees. And in our first year, we get an unqualified audit, a clean audit, with no findings, better than the DA in Cape Town.
Yeah, no, very impressive.
And we have 20 accelerated programs, which we agreed with the Premier because he's got to get the Treasury to release the money.
Yeah.
And we got thumbs up for all of them, budget spent, objectives achieved, and now we've got 200 to go. And every 3 months, the DA or Action SA try to remove our mayor because they want to make the city of Joburg ungovernable. They're trying it in Durban, and Jama-ah is preventing them from doing it.
I just want to clear up this one that just for my benefit. I heard what you're saying, and very well done, by the way, and I can't take anything away from you. I read up on that, and the mayor there is doing an amazing job, and he was given no credit at all when he walked in there. People wrote him off straight away. But so far he's there. He's been there over a year. And, I don't know how well things
I've
are going,
but he's... to Turkey now to get us 100 billion rand investment.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope he's successful. I want to just get back to my point, though. I do believe, from where I'm sitting, that with the Hawks, the SIU, the NPA and SAPS, all reporting to the president, would you or would you not agree? However that president got there, by the way, I had no idea when I voted ANC that I was voting for foreign forces.
Honestly, no, you were voting for Rupert.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But now we have that situation. It exists. Will you, as Jama-ah, when you get power, will you then reverse that, and will you bring in a totally independent Scorpion-type operation? Or will you be happy to leave things where they all report to you as the new leader of the country?
We're already flexing our muscles like we showed you in Joburg.
Yes.
And we do flex our muscles in Durban now to save that municipality from the DA who wants to make it ungovernable. I went especially down last week to put our strategy in place. So when the Deputy President had his coalition 2-day conference, with big business, all the political parties, the DA included, everyone there, I get a chance to speak. And I mentioned that we are turning the African National Congress into becoming Al Jama-ah light. In other words, they have to start looking at how they got to understand what Chief Justice Mugang says, the Al Jama-ah effect. We've reimagined politics. And just like we removed the DA from the city of Joburg, inshallah, we're going to remove them from the Western Cape province, where they are ruling now with 3 or 4 extra seats. So very easy to remove them. And because we don't want the Western Cape to secede from South Africa. I asked President Ramaphosa to charge Alan Wendy with treason. And then he explained...
what grounds was that? Why was that?
Because he wants to secede, and the president said no, he doesn't want to secede.
I've heard Alan Wendy
he doesn't want to secede. It's America that wants to bring about a regime change. So the president taught me a lesson. He told me, no, I can't charge him with treason. I can't charge those Cape exit mavericks.
Yeah.
You must read the Daily Maverick.
Yeah. You know what I find, and just on a lighter note, when you say America wants to do influence our politics here, I look at Biden and I look at the mess in America and I ask myself the question, this guy Biden falls up and down steps. He falls over on platforms. He loses his way in his speech. And I'm thinking to myself, is this guy really sitting in a meeting and saying, now, this is how we're going to influence the politics in South Africa. We're going to create a bridgehead here in the Western Cape, and we are going to buy the DA and the ACDP and what. I just can't see it, Ganief. I know you've got your information, and I'm not privy to it.
Yeah.
But I just
No,
can't
it's a
see it.
Zionist lobby in America that's doing it.
Okay.
And Biden is just a face. But it's the Zionist lobby, AIC something that they call themselves. They have been actively working. And they've invested billions of rands over the last 10 years to achieve it. And they are smelling success now because they have managed to fund Action SA, DA, IFP, ACDP, who's most probably, I can't understand that. I never expected a Christian party to support a genocide. Never in my life, because I love and respect Christians. We marry into Christians, they marry into us. Half of my mayor is a Christian. Head of my Women's League, Mrs. Latuli, who is the daughter-in-law of Chief Albert Latuli, is a Christian. And half of our councillors are Christians. So we respect them very much.
I'll tell you what, Ganief, I made myself a promise. We've only got so much time. I don't want to go down that road because I won't agree with you. But I hear what you're saying, and you're entitled to your view. But I want to deal with the manifesto because otherwise
so
we're
give
getting
me a chance to summarize in 3 minutes our manifesto.
Yes.
You haven't given me a chance.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's do that.
I've spoken to the fact that Al Jama-ah wants full employment with decent work in terms of the International Labour Organization standards, which is that there must be social benefits like pension and medical aid and bursaries, and there must be opportunities for growth and development. And I like your criticism of the Minister of Labour. There shouldn't be discrimination between coloureds and Indians. They should be like the Africans, all black. So if they want to bring about affirmative action and narrow the gap between whites, it should be between black and white. And they should leave out, coloureds and single them out. I've told the minister and sat him down and told him that, that is a problem. But let's come back to our manifesto. So the core of our manifesto is full employment with decent jobs for all South Africans.
Can you just define decent jobs? What does that mean?
Decent jobs there's an ILO convention on decent jobs. You must read it up. The first recipient of the award was Nelson Mandela. The second one was Winnie Mandela, because they push for decent work. So decent work is celebrated every year in October for the last 10, 15 years. And it's clearly laid out that there should be full social benefits like they have in Japan. There should be permanent employment, and there should be opportunities for growth and development. What does the ANC create? 3 months jobs, no benefits,
None. No.
10% of a living wage. They pay starving wages, so that's not decent work.
No.
They create 200,000 jobs, but that's not jobs.
It's a great irony to me, Ganief. Minimum wage is like 25 rand, but the ANC government pays 12. And as you say, only for 3 months. What is this?
Look, a minimum wage should be 12,000 rand. Marikana people died for that, right?
Yeah.
They died for 12,000 rand a month.
Yeah.
So when you talk minimum wage, that's the benchmark.
Yeah.
But so Jama-ah feels that that should be the core of his manifesto, full employment, decent jobs, and thank you for asking me to explain what decent jobs is. I'm sure your listeners will look it up.
Yeah, I hope
Then
so.
we have 7 rights. And that's our manifesto.
Yeah.
That's why it's a 22-page document.
Yeah.
It's grown a bit because we went around the country
fine.
and had many launches and people asked us to change.
Yeah.
So we want a right to clean drinkable water, not access. So the constitution must be changed. Access means you must walk 10 kilometers of water. You must throw stones at the dock so you can bring your bucket into the raging rivers. We want a right to universal health care. And Jama-ah has thrown his weight behind Net Clinic. We've already established 7 clinics, and this week we're establishing one in Bottasig, even in a white area.
What is Net Clinic?
Net Clinic, there are many private...
is it like Netcare or something different?
Not so big. There are many companies since the NHI was brought about 10 years ago. They started preparing for the NHI. So my son, for example, he did his PhD in NHI. So he's got a company called Net Clinic.
Okay.
And together with other activists, they've launched 7 clinics in Langa, Guguletu, Mitchells Plain, with 50 nurses and maybe a few doctors running. What you get the services that you get from any doctor or any other facility. So they even go further with wound care. If you go to a doctor, they don't bandage you. They send you away. The doctor never bandages you. They do everything. Plus, they've developed the models in terms of the NHI to show it works. So it works. No long queues. Now, we're not talking about the NHI, but what I want to say is that everything in the NHI, Net Clinic has shown it works. The only problem is the funding.
Yeah.
So at the moment, patients pay $350. When the NHI comes into being, government will pay the $350 and it will be free. So there are companies, other companies like Net Clinic, who now will have a dozen, and they're rolling out 100 of clinics, healthcare facilities, private healthcare facilities in terms of the NHI. So they try and do as much as they can to send as few people to hospital as possible because the hospitals are not making the cut. Later on, I'm sure that they will move into hospital care, but at the moment it's private health care. So Jama-ah wants a right to universal health care, a right to personal safety, and you spoke about crime.
Can I just quickly touch on that before? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm scared I'll forget, and it's
Right.
important. It's an important question to me. Is that, are you saying that you support national health care? How did you
100%.
say? Universal, which I agree with. I don't think anybody's not going to support
Yes.
that if it's of a standard that we can live with. But are you also suggesting that in tandem with that, you will have private health care, or as you say, kind of private hospitals? You
Look,
mentioned
NHI,
Sandcare or something.
it won't, private hospitals fund themselves.
Correct.
So, but now they will be funded by government. So they have the infrastructure, like Net Clinic has set up now a dozen clinics operating, Monday to Saturday. So please don't get sick on a Sunday. And I told my son, you must do Sundays too. That's when people get sick.
It's funny enough.
So they can get a certificate and not go to work the next day, right? So then there's a right to personal safety. Now these must be constitutional rights. So if you are mugged in your home, it means the government has failed you, the police has failed you, and you can take them eventually to the Constitutional Court. And then there need to be a right to be free of mass surveillance. The DA tried to introduce grabbers in the city of Joburg. We stopped them.
What?
Grabbers.
Oh, grabbers. Yeah.
Grabbers intercept your emails, your phone calls, your chats, everything, and they buy it from Israel.
Yes.
So it has to be, to bring a grabber into the country, you need the
Amazing
signature
machine.
of the president.
Yeah.
They didn't do that, and we caught them out. We in the Supreme Court of Appeal now, because they claim, that they were allowed to have grabbers to spy on councillors in Joburg. Then we want the right not to be tortured. There's an amendment called GILAB to allow police and the army to torture. And they're reducing civilian oversight. The DA likes it because they say they come into power and they want to have that powers to torture. So the right to civilian oversight is very important when it comes to intelligent matters, but the right to civilian oversight must be a right for everything the government does. Water, for example. I've told the minister yesterday that there are 1,000 criminals in this department. From the guy who tests the water to high to other levels.
Yeah.
How can you expect us to have a good system there?
Yes. Ganief, I think that's you ringing there. I want to just put this to you, that you're relying a lot on our government to do a lot of things.
No, the private sector must create jobs.
Yeah, well,
and that is 90% of our manifesto.
Yes. No, I get that. No,
Government must not do anything.
Yeah. No, I'm talking in terms of, let's just talk about national health for a second. You're comfortable with it all being privatized. So in other words, what will happen to Netcare, let's say? Now, I'm a member of Discovery.
Discovery, yes.
I use the...
I'm also a member of Discovery.
Okay, so
I pay 14,000 Rand a month.
Yeah, I pay about 4.5. Well, I don't know how many you got. But anyway, I personally think it's reasonable. I don't think it's expensive. But that's neither here nor there. It's my right to go and pay that money. It's my money. It's after tax. The hospital is there. They want to take my money and they want to give me a service. Now the government is coming along to me and saying, no, Mike, we're going to take your money and then we're going to run that hospital. Now, I'm saying to them, but look, that hospital's got nothing to do with you. It doesn't cost you any money. In fact, I, as Mike Clark, should get a phone call from the president to say, thank you, Mike, for not coming on the government health care.
There are 21 countries with NHI.
No.
They had the same argument you had.
No, but I'm not
And then people died because they couldn't afford. And if you could afford, then you're white, then you live.
But that's mine.
That must change in South Africa.
No. I listen, if I die in my private hospital, that's my business. If the government runs a hospital which people are dying in, then that government needs to be voted out pretty damn quickly.
No, they're not going to run any hospital. They're going to fund it. They're going to fund it from the tax exemptions you get when you do your pay as you earn. You get a certain tax benefit.
Yes.
And 5% of the country benefits from it. The rest of the country doesn't. Don't get that tax exemption, so they're going to put it all in a pool.
Just in more practical terms.
And that will pay half of NHI. Just the exemptions that me and you get.
Can I tell you?
When we do our tax returns.
No, I get that.
That money will be in a pool and help all South Africans.
Sure.
So not only you as a white
help.
and myself as, a professional or a politician.
But it's not going to help the person who's been waiting 9 months at the Valley Musa hospital to get treatment. Up in Gauteng, in KwaZulu-Natal, the waiting list there in the oncology department, I think has exceeded 9 months.
Yeah, you must understand that 10% of people, use hospitals. 90% of people use private, uses the doctors and
I
so on.
I don't care about
so
that.
now,
what I'm saying,
many of them can't even use the doctors and they die. So the 10% that use hospitals, you're quite right, there needs to be some thinking and hard work there to prevent the issues that you raised.
There was a fire a year ago, maybe it's more like 2 years ago, at the Scarlet Manexi Hospital. Do you know, Ganief, to this day, They have not fixed up those wards.
Because
The
they are
machines-
corrupt, because they loot.
Exactly.
And it's the pharmaceutical companies
Exactly.
and the white companies that are aiding and abetting this corruption. You
So,
must do your investigation and see how the whites are making
Yes.
the country ungovernable, even in healthcare.
Yes. So, so I mean, listen, I don't know. Us whites seem to be very busy. That's all I can say. I certainly am
the
not
whites must start paying reparations like the
Well,
Germans did to Israel.
I wouldn't mind.
And the Germans must still do that to Namibia.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem when I give my money to the government and then they throw you out of a committee meeting where they're going to spend your money and you can't see where it's being spent. That is where I have a big, big problem.
Percentage-wise, demographically-wise, whites will benefit more from the NHI than other groups. And we're going to prove it in Botasig now.
I don't care about
where
the
we
whites.
will, No, we must care about them.
No, I don't. I don't. You know, you say white areas. I was thinking about that and the other day. You say white. I'm not sure what a white area is anymore. If I can just make it on a lighter
That's
note.
apartheid zonal spatial planning.
So I live in Newlands. I live in the leafy suburb of Newlands. Let me tell you, in this particular suburb, I've got
a flat in Clemens. I'm close to
Oh,
you.
you know where I am. So, like, we've got, I think, call me a liar for one, we've got 9 ANC MPs' mansions in that area. And we're not talking small houses
I
here.
got a flat, a one-bedroom flat.
They're all over that place.
My granddaughter's in
No,
it,
well,
you
you
know.
see, you're not in the ANC. If you were in the ANC, you'd have a mansion. And then, next to me, I've got an Indian family on both sides.
Yes.
I've got a very nice black gentleman who lives across the way from me. I'm actually struggling. Oh, I've got a lot of coloured families in
Yes.
our road.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to find out
Well,
where
we used to live
where-
there, own the land, everything,
Indeed.
but then they removed us because of the group areas.
and that's another thing. That land there is called Protea Village. Do you know that land has been sitting there, Ganief, for nearly 20 years? This useless ANC government, which promised that land back to those people, Patricia de Lille still promised it
Yes.
to them, I don't know when. It is still lying there. Still nothing has happened because the government, never mind the white people, in fact, it was the white people in that area that instigated it, that got this thing going. So, you know, I mean, I don't know where these white areas are anymore because I don't know of any.
Yeah, because we
I really
contested
don't.
Newlands and no one voted for us. I hope this time after this interview, every white person in Newlands will vote for Al Jama because we've reimagined politics and they can then give a chance to the Al Jama effect as outlined by Chief Justice
All right.
Magung Magung.
You know, Ganief, you've been very generous with your time. I'm going to ask our Nantel, how are we doing for time, Nantel? Because I've so enjoyed your interaction.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And I really have. I've learned a lot, and I hope our viewers have.
Hour and 10 minutes.
An hour and 10 minutes. So it's really time to wrap up. It's a pity. But I'm going to ask you if you would like to make any closing comments. So you can have 2 minutes. Is there something that I haven't given you a chance to tell us about Al Jama before I close the show?
Yeah, I think it's important for your listeners when they decide who to vote for, and I hope it's Al Jama. So they return me to Parliament. Otherwise, I have to sell newspapers like Antoine Roux and Korsbecker told me that if the internet doesn't, get numbers, then we're all out of jobs. But, he did get numbers and it worked. So I've indicated to you that core of our manifesto is the right to decent work, full employment, run by the private sector. But then the other rights is at the heart of our manifesto, the water, universal health care, personal safety, to be free of mass surveillance, the right not to be tortured, the right to more civilian oversight. And we have been very active in legislation. For the Western Cape, we have 3 advocates that will be top of our party list. They've been involved in drafting 6 bills in Parliament, so they understand legislation. So that powers bill, they will oppose it. They will make sure it's off the record. We have 10 imams, religious leaders. We hope they will influence their congregations. They are on the party list. So if you see the person on a party list who gives your child a name and buries you and come and says, and administers to you, you're obviously going to vote for him because you already get such a low salary. But we train them. We have a political institute that is linked to the foundational principles of the liberation movement. In our party, the CEO comes from the Harun family. He was killed in detention. My own grandfather gave the ANC its name. And he wrote their constitution. And there's a statue of him at Canal Walk. You can go and see the guy walking with a vest on and a stick.
And that is?
That is Haji Uzi Ali.
Good grief.
And then thirdly,
Okay,
the other liberation family. I know you know the Mandelas and the Sepukwes and so on, but you don't know the Haruns.
I don't.
You don't know the Alis. And the other one is Latulis. You know the Latulis. He got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Of course, yeah.
So his daughter-in-law is head of our Women's League. Imam Harun's son is the CEO. And I am the party leader of the Ali. So we are steeped into the values of the liberation movement. We grew up in there. The ANC doesn't know those values anymore. That's why we raise it in Parliament, and that's why they like Al Jama-ah, because we remind them and we teach them the values, the foundational principles of the liberation movement. So our party is steeped in that, and resistance fighters don't make good politicians. So most of the resistance fighters has died off, but I'm seeing in Parliament from all political parties really committed members of Parliament, and I want to commend them, although I disagree with their policies, like the policies of the DA and the Freedom Front Plus and ACDP. We completely dissociate ourselves with all policies of the ACDP, although we support them on some issues on religious grounds, because it's a matter of faith. We respect people's faith.
That's understandable.
So Al Jama-ah, we want to remove the Democratic Alliance from the Western Cape province and later on the city of Cape Town. We're asking your listeners, Mike from Newlands listeners who love him so much, and he's also a resistance fighter, although he doesn't know it. We like them now to consider Al Jama-ah and put a cross next to Al Jama-ah so we can return members of our party to the Western Cape. And hopefully when they vote on the national ballot, they vote for me, otherwise I would have a job.
All right, Ganief, thank you so much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, what can I do and say? This man's a flatterer as well, so he says all these nice things about me. I can't say anything nasty about him except to say, I hope he's not going to be selling newspapers. I don't think so. He seems to know his subject very well, and he certainly has run a party that is making a difference. And I think it's obviously going to go far. I don't know. Everything that Ganief mentions raises another question, because I wonder about the internet. You mentioned the internet, and the one thing I had on my list, which I could not raise because of time, is why the ANC government has now cancelled Starlink, which was going to give us internet connectivity throughout the entire country at a very
reasonable. Let me give you good news. We have persuaded them to buy a satellite.
Yes.
And we've already met on it. And we will soon have 2 satellites. One for the health clinics, which is already operating. The satellite that I'm involved with, we're providing internet facilities to 500 clinics in the rural areas. But now the Defence Force wants their own one.
No, but what about our internet? I think he's got over 1,000 satellites. This is Elon Musk. And without 1,000 satellites, you're not going to get the connectivity where the guy that sits in the
satellite that we have shines on wherever we want it. It's worked quite well with the health clinics.
Yes,
and that satellite, besides providing the Defence Force with their own satellite, we need a satellite to defend us against regime change, to outsmart the Americans. So there will be enough capacity to provide service providers with internet connectivity to supplement fiber and whatever they have now. So we're right in the thick of things. And what a better person than Al Jama-ah, who gave you the internet in the first place.
Well said. Ganief, once again, thanks very, very much. And I'm going to just Well, say to you viewers, listen, there's food for thought. I didn't know the Americans were up to all sorts of things. I didn't know the whites were all banding together and doing all sorts of crazy things. I must be the only guy that's not been invited to one of these power bands that have been set up, but that's fine. I'm not going to take it personally. But I do really want to say that this has been food for thought for me. It's been very interesting. Do please read the manifesto of the Jama-ah Party. You will find it very interesting, and it speaks to a lot of the issues that I feel very strongly about in this country. I'm going to just leave you with a quote, which I like to do. It's an old quote. It's been around forever and a day. But the quote is so relevant to South Africa and where we are now, particularly with the ANC. When I think of the SAA scenario that's going down now, where media are thrown out of committee rooms and we can no longer report on the money that is being spent on flying SAA to wherever. And that quote is, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." So keep that in mind. I look forward to talking to you all soon. I thank again Ganief for coming into the studio, taking the time out. I really do appreciate it. I know he's a very, very busy man. I think from here he's rushing to the airport. And then finally from me, please take care. Thank you.